Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all well. My name is Tanner Dajne, and I'm the host of Self-Sabotage Solutions. On this podcast, it's my opportunity and my pleasure to be able to share everything I know about self-sabotage, but also to be able to share other people's self-sabotage stories. Because it's so important that we know that no matter who we are, where we come from, or what we've experienced in life, that we're all able to overcome self-sabotage. So that's why today I have strategist, speaker, author of Freedom from Self-Sabotage Coach, and the creator of the Aha Moment, Jae Rang. And I'm so very excited to have her on the podcast today because, I've been able to see, looking over her content and her website, just how successful she really is. And I'm very excited to be able to hear how she got to that point, so that maybe you guys can, as well, can learn how to overcome your self-sabotage and get to a very successful point. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Jay. If you can just introduce yourself a little bit and we can go into your story.
Yeah, my pleasure, Tanner. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to this conversation with you.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
Okay, where do we start?
Yeah, so, kind of introduce yourself a little bit, like, where are you from? What do you do? And I kind of gave a little brief overview, but I'm sure I can explain yourself as well as you can. So,
I know. Well, that's when you said the title. It's like strategist, speaker, aha moments. It's like, oh
yes.
my God. So yeah, let's bring that down. So I live in Canada. I'm in Southern Ontario in Oakville. I've been here for probably 25 years. I've moved quite a bit over my lifetime, but I chose Oakville as my home and I really enjoy it. Very proud Canadian. And yeah, so I started my business that I'm in now, my marketing company, which is where the strategist, speaker, author comes from, when I was 23. And before that, I after school I was a professional athlete. I figure skated, so I went after competing at very high ranks and being a gold test skater. I decided I loved the concept of entertaining and using that craft to bring joy to other people. So I joined the Ice Follies. I toured with them for a couple of years. And when I came back, it was like, okay, that was a huge dream of mine. Now what? Right. So it was a matter of, what am I interested in? What would I like to do? And I started interviewing in different fields. And I ended up in the cosmetics field. And I worked for a major brand for 4 years and did a lot of traveling, a lot of education, merchandising, working with some head offices. That was pretty interesting. But while I was there, it was like, I love studying behavior and humans and the mind. And so informally, I started that study in advertising and marketing and open up the company that was originally a small mail order company, just because I like to write and have some fun with that. And then it branched out into be one of the leading promotional marketing companies in Canada for many years. So, and that's taken lots of twists and turns and, whatever, but I've been heavily immersed in that industry. But as a side, always studying behavior and word energy and color energy and symbolism and all sort of the effects of humanity. So that studying from a marketing standpoint, all during that time, of course, that's all personal growth time, right? So I was introduced many years ago to Bob Proctor, who was one of the leading authorities on personal development. He actually came into my office. I was referred to him. I got chills. He must be hanging around here. He came into my office at the time, probably like 25 years ago, and he came referred he saw something that I had done from another company. He goes, hey, can we do this for me? I'm just starting this new seminar series based on the book, The Science of Getting Rich from Wallace Wattles. Have you read it? And I was like, well, no. He came into my office and he dropped off like that. Like at that time, 25 years ago, he goes, here's $1,000 worth of personal development, material. And it was all these tapes and books and everything. And I just started to really, just dive into this stuff and really enjoyed it. And it gave me sort of that spiritual component because Bob, was a teacher of the laws of the universe. So I started to understand the science of what Wallace Wattles was talking about. And then, going to Bob's seminars, sharing stages with Bob. So I became his promotional marketing arm and he became my mentor and just triggered that, that personal development of Wide Open. So that's where that first book, Sensory Media, came into play, that I recognized that promotional marketing, promotional tangible, message pieces that people call branded merchandise or merch, is probably the most interactive form of media for human beings, because it engages all of our senses. So here's all of my studies of, universal law and word energy and colors and all that kind of stuff coming in and blending with marketing and creating this really unique value of sensory media and the concept. So a lot of times when Bob had events that he would have, he had one event called Matrix that he would invite uh, international entrepreneurs, whether they just sort of had a budding idea or they wanted to take their business to the next level. They would come in for this boot camp for 6 days, and I and other experts would come in and share, our element to help them kind of move themselves and, to their next level. So those kind of conversations of taking something that's so mainstream that people go, well, yeah, you put a logo on a product and everybody's got a pen with their logo or something. And then you bring in this element of behavior studies and you go, oh, there's a science to this, right? So I've been having fun in that field for quite some time. And then obviously constantly, like personal growth is just, it's an evolution, right? We're all on that path, and I know you are as well. That path of discovery and what am I here for? What should I be doing, right? And doing it to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not really like about like perfection. It's about progression, right? It's about, constantly just trying to move forward and become, better every day. And
Yeah.
I think a
Well,
lot of
that's
people,
where I
yeah.
think that's where the aha moments came from. You mentioned that initially, and the aha moments were I wanted to find a way to stay in touch with our, our subscribers, our customers in a non-salesy way of just, giving them some, I wanted to help them understand that we thought differently. So giving them something to think about, like sort of the aha moment it's under 60-second typically blog. It's 60-second read. And it goes over sort of a situation that most people would experience, whether it was at home or as a coach or in a workplace. And then the aha was just pivoting a little bit to get you to look at that situation just a little bit different way, right? So it became, I think I started writing them about 7 years ago, and it became it got a life of its own. So I would run into people and they would say, "Hey, Jay," or should I say, "Aha"? It became like such a that was what I was known for, with the aha moments, and I loved writing them because people wouldn't necessarily comment on some of the marketing pieces, but they would comment on how pivotal the aha moment was for them, how it got them thinking, or it made a difference. Or I even had a client the other day write me, and she said to me, a year or so ago, I went into a real depression after my brother died and whatever. And she said, and I saw on your signature, it says succeed deliberately. And she said, the light went on for me and I realized that it was a personal choice, so that just doesn't that give you the warm and fuzzies and the feeling of being on purpose when somebody responds to you and says, what you said had meaning to me and it inspired me to do something. So the aha moments, I've written loaded them every Monday morning for 7 years. And I love that work. So, moving more into that work. And that was where the study of the freedom from self-sabotage coaching came in as well, of taking all the studies with Bob Proctor and the other many mentors that I've worked with over the years to sort of an expanded level of self-sabotage. It's kind of like, okay, we're always looking to clear those cobwebs out, right? So what are the cobwebs that are still sitting in my life that is prohibiting me from really just exploding who I am, right? And I think I watch a lot of watch a lot of youth and especially in the last couple of years of watching how challenging it's been for them, of how their graduations canceled and protocol at the schools and disallowing of them to get together and traveling and everything, the imposition at a time when their growth is so important to them and they're already fighting through their identity. It's already a tough enough time, especially in the teen years, that I watch them and I go back to my teen years and remember what it was like, sort of trying on different behaviors, like trying on sweaters, and you're looking for something that fits. And when you are the kind of individual like you and I, and I'm sure many of your audience members are as well, that you don't necessarily fit in really well with society, but you're not sure why. You know that you've got something to offer. There's that little flame, there's that little spark, there's that purpose that is kind of gnawing at you. But society doesn't love thinkers. Society doesn't want anybody to stand out. And what we've learned through our studies and our mastering of the self-sabotage principles is that fitting in as a safety mechanism, right? Following the tribe and not wanting to go outside whether it's a religion or a school or a behavior of some kind. There's safety in that, and we are wired for safety. So that kind of tends to override when our purpose, or that little flame that says, I want to do more. And then it's go, wait a second, is that a safe thing to do?
Yeah.
And we have to have the confidence in the network and the why behind it in order to override that, safety mechanism that can be like that crab in the bucket, kind of pulling you back down.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being safe is not always being successful or being healthy or being happy. It's oftentimes, especially like in our society, the way it's set up is the opposite. Now, you were talking about, how, you know, well, I like the beginning when you first started, where like you were able to create your business at the age of 23, and that's so amazing. So, how did you find that you're talking about like, you felt like an outcast, you had this spark inside you, but you didn't know how to use it. So, how were you able to actually ignite that spark and create your own business? Because so many people, say they want to start a business and then they just never go through with it. So what do you think what allowed you to be able to do that?
I think it's I definitely a leader. Like, it's just part of my personality. I like to lead. I enjoy bringing people together for a common purpose. I'm very much a thinker and a visionary. So, and that, when you're in a position, depending on who is around you or who your supervisors are, a lot of times, like, we're raised in a very competitive society. So there is often competition in that workplace, and I'm a terrible competitor, like terrible. I want everybody to win, and I don't want to win at the expense of somebody else. But when you get into sometimes an environment like that, a corporate environment, it's very structured in levels, and people are very protective of their position. So it's kind of opposite to the way I think. So getting into the business, it was like, no, I want to create a business where it's more of a circle, that it's more of a team, and that we all have a role to play in the team, right? But it was a lot of stumbling blocks because I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to manage people. There were so many unknowns, and so I was making a lot of mistakes along the way. And it would have been nice to maybe stay in the employment field for a little bit longer to learn or whatever. But it was a lot of self-taught stuff, and I look back and kind of shake my head a little bit. But it's amazing how the right people come in at the right time, and something as simple. And I remember the names of the two people that at the time, many years back, when had just joined our industry association, and I think I was maybe 25, and they said to me, if you want to meet people and you want to expand your business, put your name down on the board. And I was like, okay, I've never done that before, but I did. And I spent 7 years on a regional board and 7 years on a national board. And at the end of it, when I was celebrated for chairing the board and inducted in the Hall of Fame and received a coveted humanitarian award, I remember standing up on stage in front of like 600 or 700 people in our industry and saying, I might be the one holding the hardware, but I have you to thank, because had I not stepped out and invested the time in giving, in building, in learning, I don't know where the business would have been, because that exchange within the industry and even within my chamber, and I was, worked with junior achievement and all these different areas. I was able to do things that I never would have been able to do or learn in my own business. So, reaching out and being part of the community in a different way, meeting different mentors, having different opportunities to grow. I think that's where the real learning was, and building like phenomenal networks of people. So yeah, I think that anybody stepping out in their own business, it's kind of like my son went to an entrepreneurship, he took an entrepreneurship degree at a prominent university in Canada. It was a 4-year degree. It was a very difficult program. He's a bright kid, and he did it in 2 languages. But at the end of it, he started his business before he left, but they didn't even teach them how to start a business, never mind how to raise capital or anything. Like, there just aren't those programs unless you pay separately for something private. So I think the best way to do it is under mentorship, like that. Like, jump in. If somebody wants to start a business, like, just jump in. Just doesn't matter. If you're in service, there will be an audience for what you offer. If you're in service and you're on purpose, whatever it is that your skill set is, there will be an audience for you. Just have to go find them.
Yeah, I love that, especially in today's day and age where we have the internet and we have just the access to the amount of information to the help. But you were touched on a point where like the connection, and I feel like finding that connection with just human beings and just like mentors or teachers is so important. I know it has been for me in my life, and I think a lot of like the whole COVID thing coming up, but that kind of broke a lot of the connection for a lot of people. Um, and so I think it's really right now people are striving for that connection. So I know you kind of mentioned like talk about the connection a little bit, but how important do you think that really is? Um, for, I guess, building your own and overcoming self sabotage and be able to, I guess, expand and just move forward in life.
Yeah, I think that that's where when this, the self sabotage is just such a crucial element to this, because we find here comes that safety mechanism again. We find all of the reasons why not to do it, and it's partly again it's how we're programmed. And one of the things that I learned through this training program is that you're not your program. You're not your program. You're not your problems. You're not any of that. You are you are an entity that is divine in its ability to connect and create. And so, but we haven't been raised that way. We haven't been taught that way. And this goes back hundreds of years. So the brilliance of our minds and our ability to create has very much been kept from us. It's a bit of a secret. So when you uncover that secret and you realize that it's the ego that comes in, that is self-sabotaging, the ego comes in and goes, wait, who do you think you are? And that's the programming, right? The program that says, no, fit in, you're not supposed to be any better than anybody else, or what makes you think you deserve that, or well, there's a trade-off for that. And I mean, all of the things that come with money and expansion, right? But as Bob used to always say, we are beings of energy, and we are for expansion and fuller expression. That's our divine way. So if something comes in to tell you that, so I used to say to my son, when, like, picture that ego like a little guy sitting on your shoulder, and just give him a little flick and go, no, you're not welcome right now. I'm on this path, you're not part of what I'm doing anymore. So but the programming is so invisible because it is unconscious, that you don't always know why you're stopping yourself. So I think sometimes pushing through that terror barrier, pushing through that fear, and recognizing that the fear is purely your own imagination. I shouldn't say purely, in many cases it is. I'm going to stop myself there, and I'm going to correct myself a little bit, in a sense that if you have gone through a situation, or an exploration, or an expansion, or an investment, or anything at one point, and it wasn't a good experience, there's a chance that if you go to tackle that again, like maybe you did open a business and it didn't work out very well. When you go to tackle it again, the memories of the fact that you didn't really succeed are gonna come on. And I think that's where it's really important that we break that down and go, okay, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, but it's never a loss, and it's never something you can never unlearn. So if the business didn't work, well, maybe the timing was off, maybe the idea wasn't exactly right, maybe you weren't clear, maybe you didn't have the proper marketing campaign, maybe you didn't have the support. There's all kinds of elements that come into play. So look at it and say, well, I'm not going to beat myself up. It was a phenomenal experience. I tried. That's way more than what most people would do, right? So, what didn't work about it? Go back and I know I went to go into opening up another business last fall, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is an intuit, and a great healer and teacher, and a good friend, and I said to her, I'm a little bit nervous about it. She said, you're not the same person that you were before. And it was like, you're right. So the last time I did that was a long time ago. So a lot of growth and a lot more awareness, right? So yeah, I think that's where the self-sabotage is just rings that, man, we're good at it, but it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's our programming, right? So we just have to understand, whether we understand where the programming came from. I find it relevant. I like to know, because I can attach it, but I don't even know if it matters sometimes. It just matters that if that program doesn't serve you, well, find something that does, right?
Yeah, replace it with something better, reprogram yourself. Yeah. So, um, I understand you've been very, very, very successful in your life. So, where did you encounter some self sabotage in your life? Where were you kind of encountering like those breaking points? And for a lot of people, like when they are able to go to like someplace successful, like turn their life around, they had like one impactful moment or something like that. Was it like one giant impactful moment for you that you experienced that made you like say, whoa, I need to change my life around? Or was it like a bunch of smaller moments afterwards? Or what was that?
I've heard some stories of people that, have had like some, a serious car accident or a near death experience or something, and something happened to really shift them. And I don't know that I had one, I had many, I've had many today. To
Hmm.
me, life is about like one aha moment at a time. Like, I think when the aha moment hits you, it's like, that's the awareness, that's the learning that kicks in, and then something, little switch is flipped, right? But I mean, I'll go back to it again. These were probably, if somebody else looked at it, would have thought that these were pivotal, monumental experiences. But to me, they were just like all these hiccups. And when I was 17, again, working so hard to be like the model child and the best skater and a good student, and I was living with a roommate. I was 17. I was living in a room with a roommate in Toronto, and I was skating competitively. I was on the ice probably 8 hours a day and finishing up high school, and my schedule was overwhelming, and it was a lot for somebody who was, and you got to remember, that's a day before cell phones or anything, so there wasn't the same kind of personal contact, right? My parents lived in another town, and then and it was a difficult time in a sense that it was growing, and my parents were happy that I was responsible and I was looking after things because they had two other kids to worry about and everything else. But there was, there was a part of me at that time that was really challenged, managing all of that and trying to live up to that standard. And at one point, when I realized that, I had not lived up to that standard with my coach and my parents at the same time, I lost it that day, and I attempted suicide. And then I wasn't successful, and I thought I was even more of a loser because I couldn't even do that right. So even though I was very accomplished, that feeling of not being good enough, which is exactly what you have on your board, it was, was enough to make me think that I don't have a place in this world. And so that, I think, was a little bit pivotal when I look back, but not at the time, because that was a time and place where if you did that, people, you thought you were stupid and selfish, and they, gave you a kick. And my roommate, clean yourself off, and whatever, that kind of attitude. I went back to school the next day. So, and my dad met me for lunch. I remember him coming down, met me for lunch. He was very upset. My mom never even talked about it. So it was kind of like, okay, I guess that was a non-issue. So I mean, things like that happen, and they weren't pivotal in a sense of turning me around, going, oh my God, that was close, wow. It was pivotal in a sense of, I think, almost fueling the fact that I did not have that self-esteem, or I didn't feel that I was on purpose. But my little flame, wasn't going to be extinguished. There was something in me that just said, no, this is not the way it should be. And then there were other things. I remember being in the ice show. I was highly intuitive when I was young, maybe an old soul or something, very highly intuitive, highly creative, really connect with energy and people before I even knew what that was. And I remember my first year of the ice show, I was bullied substantially because they labeled me as a witch. And they thought that I was some weirdo. And it was like, I'm a good person. I'm a nice person. But yeah, I can see things and pick up on stuff. And so for many years after that, I suppressed it. I tried not to pay attention to it, and I never spoke about it, just to be able to fit into relationships, fit into good, people and everything. So there was a lot of myself that I really held back. And I think, I got to probably about, my late 30s, 40 kind of thing. And I couldn't live like that any longer. Like, I realized I was living so much to fit in. And the times when I was volunteering, or the times when I was speaking, or the times when I was growing and learning, were the times where, and expanding, I started learning about tarot, and I allowed myself to get into crystals, and I started, giving myself the gift of development, from a spiritual sense. And I started to feel very drawn to it, and very much like that was my home, right? So, and that was not welcome in my current company. So it was like, okay, I got to walk away from it. And that was huge. That was huge to do that, because I had what appeared to be on the outside the perfect life, and it wasn't. It was perfect for everybody else, because I kept everybody else going, but not me. And so it was very destructive to me. But at that point, my son was, a few years old, and he was just the most amazing gift to me. I was so grateful for him, and he was such a mirror. And I realized that at that point, again, wanting to, get out of a relationship and get out of the community and everything was very, very difficult. But I promised my son when he was born that I would be the best mom I could be. So the best mom meant taking care of myself first, right? So another little aha, another little pivotal moment, and and lots of others. And I mean, I go on because I'm old, so. But I think it is, as I said, some people have that, that brush with death or something. And I've always been grateful. I've always been connected. I've always had purpose. I've always felt like I had meaning. It's just that, I kept having to, I think the universe tested me over and over and over again. It says, how much is that purpose worth to you? How much is that meaning worth to you? And had to push through all that adversity in order to get here and go, no, now I'm at the point, with this coaching program. And, I said to you earlier about feeling like I've invested 25 years of study to get to this time right now where there's a major shift happening on the globe. And people are looking at things differently. They're having to look at things differently. They're reevaluating their lives, reevaluating, they're questioning, authority. And we're going through the shift, whether we like it or not. I think it's just a galactic thing that we need to do. And so I feel very equipped now to handle helping people, reaching out that hand to go, let's do this together. We're going to build, we're going to go on to this next life, and it's going to be great. It's going to be really good. And I think, like you, Tanner, I'm already on the other side, because I know the other side is great. I think we're going to go through a little bit of rocky times before that. And right now there's a lot of, there's a lot of divide, a lot of dissension and some disruption, but I think the other side is great. And we just hold that vision, hold that purpose, and hold that vibe, that we are co-creators. And what is it, who do we want to be? What kind of a life do we want to create? And so let's just go do that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. Like, we are co-creators. We're always like manifesting our own reality because we're all like made of energy, kind of like you were talking about before. So that's something I actually want to ask you about, because I know you're very intuitive with energy and things like that. So how do you think our energies can actually influence our world, and how can you like kind of tie that in with like the self-sabotage coaching and with the energies and just kind of like manifesting your own reality and kind of
Mhm.
co-creating and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's something that's been hidden from us for forever, that a lot of people don't realize, that they are co-creators, that they are energy beings, and they do have a connection. They are part of source. And that that what they envision, because of the fact that, you, as you mentioned, Tanner, that we're all connected and we're all part of the same energy field. That whatever you're seeking is seeking you. There's always something. So from a manifestation standpoint, when I started learning from Bob, and he used to say, start with a parking spot, manifest your parking spot. Well, for 25 years, I've always had a parking spot. Like, it doesn't matter where I go, even if the parking lot's full, I'll pull up and somebody will pull out. Like, it was kind of fun to start with. Then I had on my, many things, manifested my son. And I mean, if you, like, he was right down to the, he's going to be 7.5 pounds. Like, my doctor was just kind of shaking his head, but I mean, I knew exactly who he was before he was even conceived, and it was amazing. But one of the monetary ones was, I had on my goal card at the time that my goal card always starts with, I'm so happy and grateful now that I have perfect health. Because to me, manifesting perfect health is we were given this vessel, and we need to take care of it, right? So we are in charge. We can't outsource that. We think we can, but we can't outsource that or our thinking or anything. We need to take responsibility. So I'm so happy and grateful now that I have perfect health. Blah, blah, blah. $1.2 million in my account by December 15th. So December 15th came and went. I was nowhere near it. And Bob used to always say, well, if the goal doesn't happen, just move the date. It's like, okay. So I just changed the year to December 15th the next year. And was all kinds of things happening in my life, was in debt, business was all over the map. I had an accounting firm that was so incapable, and I didn't realize that the government had me was started to garnish my holdings in the bank. And I was talking to them going, what's happening? And they, I was outsourcing all my accounting and thinking that they were doing a great job, and they weren't. They hadn't filed anything. And I that time, this is going back 20 years ago, I apparently owed them $500,000 and didn't even know. So it was like, okay, my credit cards are running up, I'm killing myself here at work, and all of these things are happening. And my goal card said that I have $1.2 million in my bank. It was like, I ended up through a shift in a relationship, ended up selling my house, moving into another house, kept my goal card, read it every day, had little copies of it around my house, always perfect health, focused on $1.2 million. And then after I moved the following year, about I think December 10th, 11th, something like that, it was actually someone who works with Bob who called me and said, Jay, we're just starting up anew. We're gonna relaunch the Science of Getting Rich in a global seminar series, and we need your help. And I said, okay. And the first order was exactly $1.2 million in December 15th. So it was like, it couldn't have been any. So, it was, and then a couple of weeks later, I was in Las Vegas for an industry conference. I brought my son down because it was at New Year's. So we went down for New Year's and went to the conference, and Bob and Gina and some of the others were there as well. And so we got together like New Year's Day in Bob's hotel room, and we put together the whole program, which ended up being, a couple $1 million. But again, like, that's the manifestation. So I think, in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill says the hardest work you will ever do is to hold that vision regardless of circumstances. So when you are creating and you have that vision of your perfect, body or your business or whatever, your client, whatever it is that you're wanting to attract, that when circumstances are delivering themselves that seem so contrary, it doesn't mean that the universe is not contriving to bring you what you want. It just means that those components or those people are not ready yet. So it's like when I bought my last house, I had sold the house I was in, and I went and looked at different houses, and I had put offers on them and I didn't get them. And I was really, really disenchanted because I had sold my house. I had no place to go. And the buyer's real estate agent said to me, you don't seem happy about selling. Do you not have a place to go? And I said, no, I didn't. And she goes, what are you looking for? And I reached over and I pulled my list off the fridge, and she's like, what's this? And I said, this is my home. And it had everything from the address to, I wanted, I didn't want to have to repeat or spell the address. I wanted a private backyard. I wanted it on a crescent. I wanted 4-bedroom, but that kind of stuff. I had a budget and everything in mind, but it had to have presence. Like it was a long list. She goes, and it was in a very defined geographic area because I didn't want to hit a traffic pattern. So she goes, where are you going to find this? And I goes, I don't know. I just know I will. And she said, and this is the buyer's agent. This isn't even my agent. She goes, well, if you want, I'll go back to the office and see if there's any hot sheets of something that's coming up. She sent me a listing. And as soon as I walked in the front door, that house had presence. It was on a crescent, and it was 1500 Clearview Drive. And I bought it right away. I knew it was within like $30,000 of my budget. It was like, this is my house. It had the private backyard, it had everything. And it was, so I think that, but here I had sold my house. I had put offers on other houses, and the other houses were not my house. They were not. So my house just had to come ready at the time that it was going to come ready. Right. So I couldn't force that. So I think that's, one of the things about manifesting is to just be really clear about the fact that just because you can't see evidence, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. Right. And it may not happen exactly the way you want, because maybe the universe has some other ideas that are better than yours. Right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And the idea of like keeping in your mind for a long time, because so many people, I think, try to start manifesting. They're like, oh, it's not working, like a week later, or like, 30 days later, and they're like, it just doesn't work. And then they give up.
Yeah.
And then, that kind of
Yeah.
leads them down like towards like it not working because they believe
Right.
so.
And again, that's the programming, right? We're programmed that you should, if you do something that, science says there's an equal and opposite, response. Well, we think that we should see that for some reason. And it doesn't mean that you do. That's the whole point of energy, is that the energy, you don't see energy. You know how for like electricity, you know how to use it. I mean, you know how to plug something in or flick a switch, but you don't necessarily see it, right? And it's the same with the energy of manifestation. You don't see it, but that's where the what do they say? But I'll believe it when I see it. It's, you have to see it to believe it, right? Or
Yeah.
believe it before you see it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. And so for you, for like you were so successful, you're able to do so many amazing things. When you started to learn about like the self-sabotage information, how much did that change your view on things, and how much did it allow you to, I guess, make changes in your life? Because I know for me, it was very, very impactful. This information, learn about the subconscious, how we're influenced, everything like that.
Yeah. I think it was the for me the learning first, and then the recognition of how I was self-sabotaging second. So in other words, when I started to learn about universal law, and I started to learn about the ability to co-create, and I started to learn about choice, I started to learn that we're not hardwired. We thought for years that we're not. I mean, we are creatures of habit, in a sense that our brain designs these neural pathways in order to create something easier the next time, to create a habit, so that we're not constantly having. I mean, can you imagine if every day we had to think about how to brush our teeth, or how to put on our socks or something? So we learn, and as we learn, our brain creates that pathway. The more we do something, the more that pathway just gets more ingrained and deeper and stronger. And so that's where habits come in. But I think for me, it was initially the recognition of mixing up those habits, of seeing where the self-sabotage was coming, in a sense of seeing the behavior relative to now my new learning, saying, oh, we don't have to be a creature of habit. We are a co-creator. Oh, I can choose my thoughts. I can choose my destiny. So okay, well, then why am I choosing to be in a relationship that isn't serving me? So I think the self-sabotage was kind of the second part of it. The recognition, first of all, that, oh, here's who you are as a divine creature. And then, okay, so if I am that divine creature that has purpose and has meaning and is deserving of happiness and wealth, and abundance and joy and all good things, then why am I in these situations where I, don't have money? I'm in a crappy relationship. I'm not living where I want to be living. Is that my choice? So I think it was the self-sabotage was the after learning of kind of, oh, I'm the one standing in my way. Okay, got it. Right? I'm the one. Oh, it's me that needs to take responsibility. Okay, got it. Right?
Yep, I completely agree with that. And yeah, we were talking about like the brain pathways. It's so true. Just like the phrase, nature always falls down the path of least resistance, right? So it's always going to go down that pathway that we built that has that resistance, but we can create new pathways any moment, any day we want to start. We can just create that new pathway where we're going to be reinforcing that. So and
Yeah.
rewire ourselves and reprogram ourselves. So
Right. And again, it's not easy, right? It's not easy, because we're wired for habit. We're wired for that, to make things easier, because we want to keep our energy to stay safe, right? To be on alert, to make sure that we're in protection mechanism. So we do things by habit, because it conserves energy, right? So it's more difficult, to my son always says, about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So we talk about that often, that when we find that we're falling into a routine, it's like, let's just shake this up to shake it up. Have somebody challenge you from a disruptive thinking perspective. If you have a belief, or you're thinking in the same way, or you're eating the same foods, or whatever it is, have somebody challenge you, whether it's your palate, or whether it's your political thoughts, or anything, whether or not you're going to change your mind, just to challenge them, just to mix them up a little bit, and just to make sure that you're always engaging those thinking factors, right? So that you are taking control of your patterns and your habits and your choices, and that you're making ones that are relevant to you at that time, right? So, and as my Intuit friend said to me when I went to go into this business last year, you're not the same person that you were 10 years ago, so we're always growing, right?
yeah, that's so true. We definitely are always growing. Now, I know you've mentioned like food a couple of times and how important, you know, eating the right foods is. Like, were you eating unhealthy for a while, and did you like, make that change? And what did that kind of look like as well?
Yeah, I've always had an association with food that I don't know is always even healthy. I love healthy food, and I've been fit my whole life. When I hit menopause, I gained a whole bunch of weight, and then I lost it and felt amazing. And then through the COVID period, when I wasn't traveling or moving as much, I could feel the weight coming back on. And then same thing. It was like, it was that realization that of the self-sabotage again, that you're weaponizing yourself with food. And it wasn't even that I was eating bad food, I was just eating too much and sitting too much, right? So that is again yeah, I had digression done a couple of times, and two different people about 15 years apart both said the same thing, that in a previous life I was a ruthless ruler, and that I've come back to right my wrongs in this life. So that's why I'm such a humanitarian. It's like, okay, I'll buy it. But the second person took it to another level, and she said, you wanted to right your wrong, you recognized how much harm you inflicted on people, and you wanted to make things right, but the populace was so angry with you at that point that they put you in a cage and starved you to death. And I said, oh, now I understand why I always have to have food around me, so it was and again, that recognition of going, okay, now that I get it, I can override it, right? So I mean that, we hold memory in our bodies. And I know one of my teachers in neuroplasticity, Dr. UC Erkinen out of Spain, he says that our memories go back 6 generations. So you've got to know that we're holding a lot of both joy, but also trauma in the memories of our bodies, right? And so food often can be that safety factor. So for me, when I think of my childhood of being the good kid, I loved my time with my mom in the kitchen. So, and my mom was a very, very intelligent, very creative individual. And I mean, beyond, but she was very creative she sewed everything, she baked everything, she cooked everything we had, we grew up everything made from scratch. So I carried that torch because I saw the value in that. So I've never been much of a packaged person, I'm not a fast food person, so that's always served me. But that safety factor that sabotages me is going back into the kitchen, of feeling safe in the kitchen. So when I get overwhelmed, I know that my tendency is to just want to bake cookies or something. I don't even eat cookies. So it's like, who's coming over that I can bake cookies for? But I go in and I'll cook, and I love the creativity of it. I love everything about food. I mean, I like reading about it and talking about it and serving it, But again, when I make that connection, it goes back to that time in the family when it was fun time of having, when the family would come together for meals. And my mom was an amazing cook, and we'd have these beautiful meals, and she served everything so well, and tried all kinds of different recipes. And so that brings me back to very happy times of my childhood, right? So what do I do when I'm a bit stressed out? I go straight to the kitchen. I don't go to the gym. I mean, not that I don't love to exercise, but I don't, some people meditate, some people write, I love all those things, but my tendency is to go back to food. So but fortunately, as I said, I love good food. I like I just, the fresher and whatever, the better, and the more colorful, the better. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome that you were raised that way. It's very helpful because we always take on those actions and usually mimic what our parents did. So um,
Yes.
that's very important. And it's a fantastic way to think about food. Now, so I'm sure you've addressed this now. So is it more like taking control and realizing that you're not the victim to it, and realizing that you have control, and you were able to make your choices every time you're about to go into the kitchen. What do you tell yourself now if you're gonna think about overeating, or what do you
I
do?
still, I still head there. I still do it. There's no question. Sometimes sometimes it's more prominent than others. And the self-talk is, in some cases, it's like, what, just cut yourself some slack. It's been a challenging day and I'm okay with it. Like, I'm aware of it, put it that way. I'm aware that I probably don't need that, bagel and cream cheese, but you know what, I'm having it anyway. It's the awareness. It's like, but I mean but most of the time it is the self-talk is this actually going to get you where you want to go? Is this what you really want to do? So there is the awareness. And you mentioned about the victim status. And I think that's one of the awareness, the light bulbs that went off for me during this program was a conversation that we had, an element, a module, and I've been talking a lot about that module lately, of the adults versus adult children, right? And so the awareness of how society has been raised to without that rite of passage during their teenage years. So in other words, during the teenage years is normally where we start thinking for ourselves and taking responsibility for ourselves, and we get ready for that time when when it's time for us to to spread our wings. And we haven't done that as a society in a very, very long time, decades, if not centuries. So, well, decades anyway. So when I see now that the population has become very victimized because of their childlike safe behaviors and thought patterns. So I get into conversations with people that can be a little bit disturbing for them, because I will challenge authority, and not in a bad way, but if something doesn't make sense, I always say, I heard David Icke say this the other day, and I was like, I say this all the time. I don't follow stupid rules. I'll follow rules if they make sense, but I don't follow stupid rules. So I don't follow them just because it's the thing to do or the flavor of the day. Like if something comes out, it's more of a feeling with the thinking that you go, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And I'll start to question, and I don't care if it's a doctor, a politician, or whatever. I want to understand. And fortunately with Google, I mean, we can do so much research everywhere. And then we can decide as an adult, does that make sense to us? And can we align ourselves with it? And I'm shocked at how many adults don't take that thinking step, right? They just, if that's what they're told to do, they do, because person is in a position of authority. That's what children do, because children look to authorities for the leadership and to learn, but there's a point in your adult life that you grow into your own, adulthood, right? And that adulthood means taking responsibility for your choices, and that responsibility comes with education and awareness. So if you're going to make a choice, whether it's which bank to go to or where to live or what job you're going to have, and all of the millions of little choices that go in amongst that, especially as a parent, you need to be able to assess and question your environment to make sure that those choices are going to be right for you and your family. And so I'm seeing over the last 2.5 years, a lot of adults and parents making choices that don't align with their health or their safety, but yet they do it because they respect authority. And so that, and then they become victims of what society has done to them. And that victim status is it's just completely handing over your power. People do it in relationships all the time. Well, I can't help it because he does this or she does that. It's like, wait a second, that's their issue, that's not your issue, right? So what you have a choice if you can either accept that behavior, or you can decide that no, this isn't for me, I'm going to leave. Leaving or modifying the behavior is very difficult to do, but sitting as the victim means you have completely handed over your power. So you're just the the response, right? And I don't think our maker designed us as responsive people, in a sense that, I think we're all designed with a purpose and with the ability to create that is our role, is to step into society, be a contributor, be part of moving humanity forward, and shine that light brightly, be that beacon, whatever it is that, that makes you shine, and make it, as brilliant as you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the universe is always conspiring in our favor, and if we're in that victim mind state where we can't control it, well then, things are just going to happen that we don't have control over. But yeah, it's people always playing that woe is me, the victim card, and I think a lot of people even just kind of see life as like life happens to them, when really it's we are life, right? We are, just like you said, like we are part of the creator. Like the creator made us, and within all of us, we can create as well. So I just love that point of view of just that we're all able to create, and we're all able to manifest our own realities.
Well, I guess it's a belief. I guess it's a belief, and that is my belief, and I think because I have manifested enough things, people and circumstances, and just small things like I want green lights. I have to get someplace. So, okay, green lights, let's go. And like small things like that, or being in a lineup, or all, or that route's not going to work. I'm going to take this route, and okay, just guide me to whatever that route is that I'm supposed to be taking right now, and get me there in the safest possible way. And those, taking responsibility for those choices and manifesting on a very, moment by moment basis. I believe that we are co-creators. I get into discussions with people who believe that life is predetermined, and well, you think you're creating that, but that was actually the intention all along. So it's a different school of thought, and I mean, to each their own. I I was raised to be responsible, so I
Mhm.
guess that's going to be my belief, right?
Yeah, definitely understandable. And yeah, I do agree there is the different viewpoints. But even like science nowadays has come out with like the quantum physics, which we should just believe everything was made of atoms, but now we know there's three different particles even below that. That's all just energy. And we can tell that where everything's made of energy. You walk into a room when it's a very like negative situation, you can feel like that like negativity. You walk in, you're like, oh, whoa, what's going on in this room, right?
Yeah,
So
oh
like
my
uh,
goodness. Yeah.
so
And
like
it's, once you, and that's what I said for years, that I suppressed it. And then when I welcomed it back in, I actually worked on it. It's like I wanted to feel that. And then I got to the point where I remember ending up in a psychiatrist's office at one point about 15 years ago. And he said to me, he goes, "You don't know where your energy ends and somebody else's begins." And it was like, no, I guess not, because I think that we're all connected. But that was part of it, was I was absorbing the world's energy, which at that time was, was the last recession, was very negative. And it was like, oh my God, I felt like I was carrying this huge weight. But it's true. I mean, you can walk into a room and it's like, man, for me, it cut it like a knife. My friend, the Intuit, and we had a weekend away a few weekends ago. We went into an antique shop in just a little quaint town in Northern Ontario. And we were walking through, and I started to move towards the front of the store. And it was like, all of a sudden, I just thought, I got to get out of here. And I looked at her, and she was still at the back, and she was trying to, like I was trying to, just honor all of the eclectic little things that they had for sale. And the store was jammed, and it was all antiques, it was all secondhand stuff, right? And it was everything from furniture to cookware to you name it. So I started moving out of the store, and I got out of the store, and I was like, and she walked out and she did the same thing. And she goes, "I have to be careful of how much time I spend in that store." And I said, the energy that was coming off of all those spoons and all of those teacups and everything, and because there was thousands of pieces of giftware and furniture in this tiny store, it was overwhelming. So I know she and I did a session together with some other experts a couple of years ago. And she went in the room before we took on the room with smudge sticks, and she says, "We got to just clear this of whatever." And I remember when I bought my house on 1500 Clearview, that the reason that they were selling the house was a couple was breaking up. And as soon as I walked in, I knew that it was my house, because the house had presence and it was gorgeous. But there was a heavy energy in there. So before I moved in, I opened up all the windows, and we got pots and pans, we're getting the noise, and we're getting the circulation, and we're getting rid of the negative energy. So yeah, when you start to feel it, the good and the bad, it's nice when you're with somebody that just is not competitive and knows himself, and doesn't have any preconceived anything, that they're just present, and they're happy to be with you. And it's such a great feeling to be with those people, versus when you walk into those. I know from golfing, I've taken up golf for the last little while, and sometimes I go into competitive environments, and I know they want me to miss that putt. I feel it so hard, and it's like, come on, it's a friendly game, right? But that's, but we hold that energy, and the energy doesn't lie, right?
Yeah, so true. And kind of makes me think about like your like intuitive, like your like gut intuition, like the gut feeling that you get. I feel like that's part of your energy as well. What's your opinion on like the gut feelings? I know a lot of people say, oh, you should just trust your gut. You should, trust your intuition. And for me, I know that's been very important in my life. How has that affected you in your life?
Yeah, I think I went through a real period, especially a couple of years ago, of recognizing the difference between thinking and feeling. And I think there's a combination in there. But I've always tried to work things out. And I wasn't really raised in a religious background at all, which is fine, totally fine. But it took me a while to come into spirituality and to be able to understand sort of that energy field, whatever you want to call it, and our connection to it, right? I've been not, I'm always plugged in, but I still, the old conditioning comes up that I need to be responsible and I need to figure things out for myself, right? So oftentimes there's that, too much thinking, not enough feeling. Or that, as you said, to learn to trust your gut and trust that it's learning first how to be aware of it, before you can trust it. What does that feel like? What does that feel like? And so going through, like a few years ago, when after, when things shut down, we kind of had to reevaluate and reinvent a little bit. It was like, oh, why is this happening? And initially I think that's where my association with food came in again, or my challenge with food, of trying to figure things out. And then I pulled back and said, no, it's not, you're not, you can't do this on your own, because this isn't about you. It's bigger picture. And so it was about, I would go down to the water. I live on Lake Ontario, and I go down to the water, and I'd walk in at nighttime, and I'd be, well, one of the only people down by the pier, and I just walk and I just open myself up, and I would just like breathe to the point where I was almost like, my rib cage was so expanded, and I would have my arms open and just try and take in as much energy. And I would ask those questions, like the questions that were gnawing at me. Like in some cases was like, what do you want me to do? But should I buy this? Should I not? Should I go here? Should I not? And just waiting for that answer to come in, and getting used to what that feeling was in my body. So if it was the right answer, I had a very calm feeling. And I introduced you, Tanner, a week ago, to a business model in precious metals. And I'll tell you that story because it relates so much to this, and that it's been interesting the last couple of years, going through this process and reinvention and shift and everything that the world is going through, and feeling that, that heavy energy and the dissension and the division, and on all levels, political, spiritual, it doesn't matter. And so when I started feeling very vulnerable financially, and going, I have money, but it's invested, and I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. And then the radar was up for silver, and I don't know where that even came from. It was probably what I was hearing or listening to. I thought, okay, I have to pay attention to this. And so I think around September of last year, when I came across this membership program, that I looked at it, was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Did some research, talked to some people, and then when I signed on, I had this like, oh, that was a good decision. It was like my body was just so calm, and I wasn't even 100% sure what I was doing. I was probably maybe 50% sure what I was doing. I didn't understand all of what it was, but my body said, good on you, good decision. And so I think it's not only trusting your gut, but learning what that feels like. What does it feel like for you? What is that feeling of, I made a good decision, or that is the right thing, or it's not the right thing? And once you start to tune into that, there's, I think Jason and some others say, your body's a great lie detector. So I have in my membership program, I have one of the most prominent body language specialists. He's offered a program inside our membership on body language. And same thing, he said, your words might say one thing, but he said, when you get to understand body language, he goes, your body's not going to lie, right? It's always going to tell the truth. So, and I think it's the same thing. Once you get to understand and feel and know what that feeling is for that right decision or wrong decision, then yeah, 100% trust it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really believe that our bodies do always tell us the truth. And, I do muscle testing, and that's the way I can kind of just speak to my body. And I know that a lot of the people kind of do that as well. And some people probably are like, oh, what is muscle testing? What are you talking about? But yeah, I think it's really important that we were able to listen to our gut, and be able to just kind of listen to what our intuition is telling us. But at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to use your thoughts and to think through things logically, because a big part, I think, of overcoming self-sabotage is kind of getting away from that short-term thinking, where we're just looking for the instant gratification, that the quick fix, the hit of dopamine right away, and we're not thinking long term, like, how is this going to affect me down the line? if I eat this way my whole life, am I going to be set up for health, down the line? Or if I'm not,
Right.
if I want to be able to create a job or a business and I just go home and just watch Netflix all day, am I going to be able to actually create that business?
So
So
true,
yeah,
so
so
true. And I found even in the last couple of years, like a lot of those choices have come in, like, looking at some of the studies that Jason's, put out, that I have, I decided to give up coffee, and it was like, it wasn't a big deal to me, but, I decided to have something other than coffee. I've never had a Netflix account. I don't watch any of the programs that people have on TV. I mean, all of a sudden, we'll be at a golf game or in a social environment, people, did you see Game of Thrones or whatever? It's like, I never watch any of that. And I think that's when you talk about instinct, I think that's the instinct kicking. It's kind of like, I just not drawn to it. Like there's nothing about that that is of interest to me. So I don't. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't. I know people that that's their break, is that, they sit down with some Netflix and some popcorn, and that's kind of them, having a little chill time. And if that works for you, then I guess great. But for me, it was like, no, it doesn't, I just don't gravitate towards it. So, watch a little bit of sports, but I bought a new condo, and we were doing all the fixtures and everything, and she said, do you want, they charge you to do this special mounting on the wall and everything if you want to put your TV. And I said, I don't even turn the thing on, so don't worry about it. So, but yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point you make about the TV because I think a lot of people do like kind of get like stuck into like their TV shows or whatever. And as we know from our self-sabotage coaching, just how impactful that can be on for us because it's our subconscious mind is always just scanning the environment, and it doesn't matter if it's fiction or reality. So even those television shows, and they've been getting much darker, like the Shameless and all these other shows where they're just having like broken relationships, cheating on each other, drug problems, money problems, and our minds are mimicking that. I think
Right,
so.
right,
That's
right.
why they
They
call it TV
do.
programming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and somebody pointed out too that I never realized, that all of the characters in many of the children's stories are all orphans or on their own. They're not part of a functioning family. It was like, that's so true.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's, I think from being in advertising for such a long time that I know a lot of the tricks. I mean, I know a lot of how you get people to buy stuff. So I think, coming into the self-sabotage program, it was easier for me because I recognized a lot of it. But and studying like you do, Tanner, of the subconscious mind, and knowing that the subconscious mind, it records everything. Our conscious mind is focused on something. Like if I said to you, stand up in your room and have a look for all of the things that are red, and you'd be focused on what's red, and your conscious mind can do that, where your subconscious mind is taking in everything, many thousands more impressions than your conscious mind is. So, what's happening with and I don't think there's any, accident, they call it programming on TV, but they're, all of the programming that you're picking up, and all of these, whether it is, advertising billboards, or the mantras, that have been, they're very blatant lately, the last couple of years, and mantras are out there, but there's so much subconscious stuff, like being poor is noble. It's the poor people that, what we talked about at the beginning of being, you can be grateful, but you can also be, dissatisfied, and that's okay. They're not interchangeable words. So yes, we are grateful for our home and our families, and our, that we can grow our food, and that we have, legs to walk on it. I mean, we endless. My big thing is I'm grateful when I turn the tap and fresh clean water comes pouring out at the exact temperature that I want. Like, I marvel at that every day. I mean, I'm grateful for that, and and a whole bunch of other things. But that doesn't mean we have to be satisfied. And so I think that the programming is about being satisfied to have a little, and be satisfied that it's, you should be grateful that you have a home to live in. Absolutely. Absolutely be grateful for your intellect, for your family, for your creator, for everything. But you're a divine creature that is for expansion and fuller expression. So it doesn't mean you have to be satisfied with that. Be grateful for it. You be grounded in gratitude, but that still reach, still expand, still grow, right?
Yeah, yeah. Always, never give up on, your dreams or your goals, and always keep working towards that. I completely, totally agree with that. And I think a lot of people sometimes even don't even allow themselves to be grateful in the moment or satisfied. They're just kind of like unhappy with everything. Like, someone who is unhappy with their weight and they're not really grateful with it, and they know what they want, but they're not really even able to move forward in that. So and then what I always tell them is, you just got to accept yourself where you are and then continue, don't be satisfied with it, move forward. So kind of like you were talking about,
Mhm.
being grateful, that's amazing thing, but then continuing to want more, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's a normal thing
Mhm.
to want more and to be able to do
Yeah.
better.
I think the tough one for many people is being grateful for the crappy stuff.
Mhm,
Being grateful for the challenging circumstances, being grateful for the people who were abusive,
mhm,
being grateful maybe for parents that didn't give you what you needed, being grateful for the teacher that maybe failed you. Like I think it's very difficult to be grateful for the crappy stuff.
mhm,
And but when you look back at it, you realize that when we talk about everything being an aha moment, those were all aha moments that they had an impact on you, and maybe it was a negative impact, but it challenged you to do something better, something different. If nothing else, recognize the source of where that came from, right? So when people have said about with teachers, that some teachers are so inspiring and other teachers are very much within a contained framework, and they want you to perform in a certain way, and if your way is not that certain way, that's not the structured way and not the behavior way that goes that the school system honors, then somehow you're not smart or capable or worthy of going to university or whatever it is that your talent is. And I think that so many kids that go into school like that, that if that is their only source um, of support or inspiration, that I feel badly for them, because school, and it's the luck of the draw whether you get a teacher who is going to see your spirit and be able to do something about it, right? I mean, it's the teachers have a framework that they need to work in, and now they're teaching way more kids than they probably have time for, and they have all kinds of answers they need to do, and I think they get stuck in administration. And I think some of the really great teachers in the world don't have a chance to be really great because of the system, and kids just get locked into it, which is unfortunate. But there are a lot of people who didn't finish school, didn't go to university, and I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing. It's for each teach their own, but not everybody learns the same way, and not everybody is going to be a doctor, and that's a good thing. So if somebody like my step grandson, he I've been talking to him and saying, what turns your crank, because I'm not gonna say to him, what do you want to be, like, what turns your crank, what do you have fun with? And he loves fixing stuff. So I said to his mom, like, where do you think that's going to take him? Like, do you think he's going to go in a trade school or something? She goes, I hope so. She goes, his dad wants him to go to university, but I said, if he can fix stuff, he will always be employed. He will always be needed. And if he has fun with that and that's his interest, then don't try and teach him something else. Like, let him be who he is, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so important to do the things you love in life, and I think a lot of people, do the things they dislike in life, and they're like, "Why am I so unhappy?" And we can all usually do something that we love in life and still be successful, be able to make that money. And usually that's where we'll find our zone of genius, essentially, where we're able to,
And it sounds cliche, but it really is. At the end of the day, it really is true. And I know I studied with Gay Hendricks, and he has these zones of competence that he calls it. The zone of incompetence, zone of competence. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then the top zone is a zone of genius. And he goes, most people sit in that zone of competence or zone of excellence. I think is they sit in the zone of excellence because they become very good at something, and they will make a lot of money doing it. But it's not but they could still be replaced, right? That you could still teach somebody to do what you do. But when you sit in that zone of genius, that when I talk about my aha moments and my, taking a human approach, like whatever, that is my genius. That is my study of bringing all of my life's work to one place. And this that I do isn't something that anybody else can do, because all of the hurdles and the challenges and the twists and turns and everything have brought me to this place of being able to take a human approach and convey that life is about aha moments, and to shift that perspective. That's my zone of genius now. That's not something anybody else can do. And I know you have yours, Tanner, and everybody does, but it's a matter of when you say about finding joy and not being work, it sounds cliche. And most people think it's a pie in the sky thing, and it's really not. It just, sometimes it takes a while to get there. Some people just land on their feet right off the bat and they know it right off. And I know, you said that when you landed in the coaching circle, and you said, I'm going to do this in a big way, and you just kind of landed, and you were just so sure that this is where I belong. So when you know that that's your zone of genius and only you can do that, it's like, that's what makes you happy, right? It's doing all the other stuff, getting there, that is the enslavement or the victim, right? But sometimes you have to pay your dues. But when you're sitting in your zone of genius, it's sweet. It's sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you know the zone of genius. I was actually I read that book a while ago. I'm rereading it right now. So the
Yeah.
Big Leap, right?
Yeah.
By you actually studied with him, which is awesome.
Well, I remember him saying, goes, I don't even answer my own door. But he said, he goes, it didn't start out that way. He says, I was zone of, competence, zone of excellence for a long time. And he said, and it was, then I got to like 50% and 55%, 60%. He goes, now I'm like 95. He goes, 95% of what I do. And he goes, I hardly work because I'm not going to sit in my zone of genius like for like a whole work day, But he says, when I do apply myself, my work is in that zone, and I pay other people to do their work in their zone. It's like, of course, Bob Proctor used to say that all the time. He goes, I don't clean my pool or write checks. There are people who are really good at that. Why would I do it? Well, it's like, yeah. And we get caught. I mean, I'm doing the same thing right now. It's kind of like we go through these, obviously, like, 2.5 years ago, before everything kind of shut down. Yeah, life was pretty good. I was living in my zone, and then all of a sudden the government decided you're not going to live in your zone anymore. So then you shift and you modify, and you kind of reset your stuff and go, I got to get back to my zone again.
I have one, or I guess like two more questions, but the
Okay.
one question, if that's okay. So we've talked a lot about school and how important it is for our kids. So what have you been doing for your son and maybe your grandkids, like to make sure that I know you talked about like the little guy on the shoulder flicking off, and I love that like visual and so powerful to be able to use that. So what have you been trying to do to make sure that your son and maybe your grandkids are aware of what's going on and able to
Yeah,
maybe do that rite of
and that's a
passage?
great question. And I know my son was raised. I mean, I met Bob 25 years ago. My son's 28. So I mean, he was raised in this material. He read Think and Grow Rich when, a couple of times when he was like 17. He started his own business early. He has gone through the traditional system, but I think as he was going through school, I was a very involved parent, not a controlling parent by any means, but I was involved because I got to know the teachers. I volunteered at the school. If there was an issue at school, I would hear from my son first. He would come home and he'd go, what happened today? And I created a very safe environment for him to fall down, for him to be himself, for him to talk about everything. And there wasn't, I mean, I don't think my son ever had a timeout or a punishment or anything. Like, there was none of that stuff, because there was always just a conversation about stuff. And there was never, times where he would get angry that something had happened. And I go, okay, well, all right, well, let's look at it. Like he had some of his top Pokemon cards in a binder. And I mean, those things would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars today. They were in a binder, and he was in an after school program, and he left the binder in the change room. And I picked him up at the afternoon school program. He went back in to get his stuff, and he goes, Mom, my binder's gone. He was so angry with himself about that. And it was like, okay, well, that sucks, but I guess somebody else needed it more than you did. I mean, he was really upset, but it was kind of, it's taking everything and saying, okay, accept it. Whatever that situation is, accept it. What can we do about it? And how can we grow from it? So that was a big part of it. And the same with, even with teachers, I taught him to think for himself and to question authority respectfully. And he is a very, very respectful, and he's a Libra, so he's even way better at it than I am. But he's so, he would come home in grade 4 and he'd say, Mom, the teacher likes girls better than boys. I said, yeah, but that's because it's the structured environment is more conducive to how girls learn than how boys learn. Boys like to experience. They like to be involved. Boys can't sit in a chair. So if it's not working for you, either ask to go to the bathroom so you can get up and walk around, or question the teacher on something and ask them if maybe, hey, I have an idea. Can we do something a different way? And I said, just because she's the teacher, she's not God. She's a human being. I'm sure she's open to suggestions. And as long as you're kind and respectful in what it is that you do, what's the worst that she can say? No. Well, she says no. Okay, then we know we got to do something else. But it was always that conversation of how, how's it working for you? And I used to say to him, you're not there for the teachers are there for you. Their job is to create you and help create you and build you in a way that you're going to be the most functioning member of society that you can be. You're not there for them. So understand that shift, right? And again, not at all disrespectful to just saying that you're an important part of this. You're the reason that school is there. So if something isn't working, then we need to address it. And even right up until when he went to university, and now, in hindsight, it's, he did not want to go to university. See, here's his instinct kicked in, and he's a very, very bright guy. And he said, why can't I just learn what I need out of books and mentors? And I said, well, you could, but I said, society wants to see that piece of paper. So, and I said, plus it's going to be a growth experience. The friends that you'll make at university, you'll have through the rest of your life. So all of that was true, but I see some of the indoctrination in him. And so as much as he has been raised within that feeling of being, a divine creative creature, and he knows that, I still run up against, sometimes I can tell that society has programmed him to a certain extent, that there is a contradiction in there sometimes, but he's a very responsible thinking, feeling person. And he's very, and he knows himself, and he is very much in tune. You were talking earlier about energy, and he's very much in tune to energy. So he knows when to run to or from somebody. He has no issues if the crowd isn't working, and he has no issues. Like, as I said, in university, he went right to the dean's office at one point and said, the way this is structured is not, good for the program. And a lot of people are going to fail as a result of this decision that you're making. And you need to look at it. And they said, well, there's nothing we can do about it this year, but thank you, we are looking at it. So, and he was never been afraid of doing that. And he is at 28 in his position at work, he is as comfortable talking with his, 8-year-old niece and having a fabulous conversation and time with her as he is with a, president of a major Canadian company that happens to be a client of his. And I know he was golfing, yesterday, the day before, with some of them, and he can fit in, because to him, all man is created equal. And he is no better or no worse or no less, I should say, no better and no less than anyone else. So having that sense of belonging to society, he's very comfortable and has that kind of energy around him, that he knows that there isn't anyone who has domain over him, nor who he has domain over. And so that sense of just kind of fitting into society with him is it makes him, he's got a big network, like people like being around him. And I think that's a big part of it, that, and that was kind of an evolving process. But I think that's really important for kids to learn, in school, is that, if it's okay to question, it's okay if something doesn't make sense. And it's okay if you're, if you're not doing well in a subject. I used to say to him, you're not supposed to do well in every subject. Like, that would be unnatural, and he had to be on the honor roll. I mean, he always pushed himself. And there were times where he would just study hard just to get through the subject, whether he wanted it or not, because he just wanted the, let me just get those marks so I can get them off my back. not the reason that you should be in school at all. Like you should be in school to, that's where I give the Montessori system a lot of credit, because they teach you based on your affinity, right? And he started in that program when he was younger, and it was great. I remember he was in like senior kindergarten, and they came back and they said, "Are you okay if we teach him multiplication?" I was like, "Knock yourself out. Why are you asking?" "Well, that's grade 3." I was like, "Well, if he's going to learn it, then teach it to him." But that's their thing. Well, he was very good in problem solving, and he's a visionary. Like he's one of those people that he can sit at the top and look through all of the aspects of what's happening, and he can put all that stuff together. And so I think that's why he was always good at math, because he would kind of rise out of it and he would see that bigger problem, and then he could put it back together. So, and the school system isn't designed to do that. It's designed to teach at, a common denominator, right? So I think parents need to be involved. They need to question. They need to have other experiences that go along. Like when grade 4, when they started teaching about banking and money, that was when, okay, that's when we get our accounts. And that was what at home he set up his first little business, and he raised money, and he kept some of the money for himself, some went in his account, some went in his savings, someone in his spending account, and the rest went in his charity account. And he decided to give the money to the school to buy sporting equipment, and this was in grade 4. So I took the opportunity. Okay, if you're going to learn about that, then hey, we're going to have that conversation at home so that you can get some real life experience of what it means to actually have money, right? So I think that's where, the parents need to not rely on the system to teach their kids. Like if you're going to be in in the school system, then use it as a basis, but you need to be part of that teaching process as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It sounds like you did a fantastic job with them. I think we all have some kind of programming in us from the system. I think it's hard for, even the self-sabotage coaches, we all still have some kind of programming, or deep rooted programming somewhere within us that we're working through. Or and it's never about perfection, like we talked about at the beginning. It's always about progression, moving forward. So for the listeners here, and this is the last question, um, what is the one thing you'd want to leave with them to think about, or to be able to use to overcome self-sabotage? And I'm sure you probably mentioned it so far multiple times throughout what we've talked about, but what is the last thing you'd like want them to focus on, their
Yeah.
overall arch?
I know. We've covered a lot.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot. One of the light bulbs that went off for me in the program was that you're not your programming. You're not your problems. And to understand that whatever that sum total of the programming is, that's not you. That's not your identity. That just happens to be the stuff that has occurred through your life to this point, and that you do have a choice. And within that choice, allow yourself the freedom of the freedom and the gift to know how deserving you are of joy and abundance and all the great stuff that that life has to offer. And don't be afraid to go after it. Here comes the aha moments again, right? Like everything is like one aha moment after a time after another. But I think that's the one thing, is understand that you are not your circumstances, you are not your programming, you are not your problem. Separate yourself from them and go, I am a divine creature of the creator, and I have free will, and I have choice, and I have intuition, and I have intelligence, and man, I have a life to live here. It's like, okay, let's get started with it. And dispel the fear. And I think it's the fear, partly, as we've talked about many times, about fitting in, about that being a safety factor. And regardless of what's going to come up as you move through that, of being yourself. And a lot of people are going to try and take away from it, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of life. But just really honor that within yourself. Allow that flame to just be your own oxygen, to that flame, and let it burn really brightly, because that's what you're here to do. That's what you're supposed to do. So go do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And if people are wanting to find your work, I'll put your descriptions in the link, your links in the description down below. But just real quickly, for anyone who might not be looking at the description, where can they find you?
Yeah, the social, it's either J Rang or with my middle initial JM Rang, at JM Rang on Instagram or on Facebook, on Telegram as well. J A Human Approach is my Telegram channel, and then the website is, which again is under my name, jrang.com.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a fantastic website, everyone. Go check it out. And she has great content on Facebook as well. So, you know,
Thanks,
very,
Tanner.
very smart woman, and always a pleasure, or it was a great pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing all your information. And
Yeah, it was wonderful. Great conversation. Thank you, Tanner.
thank you.